Should have done it early.
I know. So anybody who's on audio, just listen for a moment. I'm doing the shushing noise. Come on, Andreas.
I'm reading.
It's an audio podcast. You got to get some kind of reaction.
Mm-hmm.
We had it. It's done. It's over.
The child apparently murdered Justin in something very like a duel, and I'm unsure if I am more frightened by the prospect that it was a deception to simulate Justin's death, or if it wasn't. Given what is at stake, I would never have been in. Remove the child from play, but the backstab could let his daughter's son to be neutralized.
No. Okay, that's enough. Welcome to the Dress Files podcast. So, we're your hosts, people, and stuff. We're a member of the Broken Jars Network, and Andreas is finally reading the Dresden Drop microfiction number 2. What was the name? This was Journal? Or yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So, a letter from Morgan to Anastasia, right? Or was this just in general?
Yeah,
like,
so
it was a journal entry.
Yeah, it was written into his journal, but he knew that she would probably read it afterwards. So like both, sort of.
Right. Yeah, so I think this dropped the Tuesday after we recorded, like most news, either 30 minutes after we record or, 2 days after. Priscilla does that to us on purpose. So
yeah, she's got to swap it. Do like the art drops on
Perhaps I have been too hard on him. Understatement of the fucking century.
Do the art one right after we record.
Perhaps I have become paranoid and mad. I don't know if you're mad, but you're certainly paranoid.
Yeah, but now he was really looking out for him the whole time, so it's okay.
Right. Yeah, so Andreas hadn't read it yet, and then we were like, dude, it takes like 2 minutes, and he started like making exclamations, so we figured we had to go live. But we're gonna spoil shit and swear a lot.
And we're not meant for kids.
Yeah, and
even though we sometimes have a baby on the podcast as well.
Well, I mean, where do babies come from? So not the ceiling, EG. They're not. Did you spray the house? I mean, you got to make sure that they can't get in. That's what they mean by baby proofing.
Well, you asked the question, I started looking.
Wait, so
how do I don't take it for granted. I wasn't there when I was born. I don't know.
You were there when you were born. You may not have been there when you were conceived.
You don't know
that. You better have been. Make sure you click on our affiliate links like drivethrurpg.whatnet. Whatever.
Something.
It's .com. Yeah.
Remember the Jim Butcher one, but you can't remember the one that'll make us money.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's Jim Butcher's website. So, also, we're episode XDX, part X of the skin game coverage.
There's 3 digits now. I think we're 102.
We're triple X. Woo, fancy. And we're going to talk about the journal. Did you finish it already, Andreas? Did I stall? Long enough.
Yeah,
it took you like 6
He's in a morose mood like the rest of us. Well,
it's very hard to read when people are like,
mute the thing. You have the ability.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't want to have like Justin sit there, Andreas, hello, and I was like, I wasn't there. That would be very nice.
I don't think.
So, what do you think about Snape's letter?
Jesus Christ.
I don't like the Margaret thing. It makes no sense to me.
Right. It definitely seems a little weird. It was funny because like it dropped and I haven't been keeping up on stuff as much. So I saw it in the chat and EG was like blasting it. And I'm like, it's probably not so bad. And then I read it and I'm like, it's not so bad. And I'm like, no, this doesn't feel right continuity wise. It kind of feels like I could have bought this prior to Turncoat maybe, in some kind of way, maybe prior to Proven Guilty. For sure, because you hadn't hardly seen him yet, but I get some of it. I think I'm like 2/3 where it's like, okay, he's not sure if Demorne did it. He hated Demorne, which I'm still kind of curious about. Like, why wasn't there more pressure on Demorne if fucking Morgan was look at how much he hounded Dresden. If you thought an actual warden was dirty, you're telling me he didn't go in there with a team of other wardens and just lay the smack down? Was it because Demorne had connections? Like, what's going on? So there's definitely
just that well hidden.
Then answers.
There are ways that I can make it make sense, and therefore the rest of it doesn't really bother me. I don't know. I read it once, and then we got into the opposite side of the argument, me and EG, of like, this sucks. No, it's okay. I think it's fine.
Right. This is fine.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of implications, things in this very short amount of text. But yeah, the market thing, that makes no sense to me.
Right. Yeah. So to summarize for people who may not be remembering or didn't read it yet, is that Morgan made a promise to Margaret to protect Dresden, and then apparently immediately backtracked on that as soon as he got snatched up by Demorne because he might be infected. And then it starts to play the whole like, is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? Which even Rashid has been on, right? And we've seen Rashid do that twice. And there was some interesting kind of tie-in commentary from the subreddit. I don't necessarily ascribe to entirely, but the whole idea that Dresden might be a destroyer because Morgan capitalized the D here. So
what does that mean
something.
anyway? Like,
well,
we don't really know, but
no, it's probably just another term for a dark starborn or whatever.
Did you watch Star Wars? He's the chosen one. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, we don't have such a hokey prophecy that he's going to bring balance to the White Council because we know how that worked out. But
no, but that's what he is. He's a fulcrum. He's a starborn. He's the protagonist. He's the he's the guy.
Yeah, he's the decider, and destroyer.
He picks the good guys or the bad guys. Whoever side he picks wins.
Well, that's even what the whole point of being a starborn is. You wield power over the outsiders, and power cuts both ways. So you can do it good, you can do it bad. Well, good being, for reality, or you can do it in antithesis of reality.
Right.
You're a coin flip. He's a Targaryen. Congratulations.
Oh, boy.
But even not even just the Margaret thing, I have a little bit of a problem with Morgan knowing about, I always thought that the Blackstaff was kind of a thing that was not going to be as well known, because I had a feeling that's a dangerous thing that you let a bunch of people see that one guy gets to do all that, and then they're going to want to take and yeah, okay, fine, he's got an artifact that lets him, but I can't imagine someone like Morgan who would have been okay with like even just because he's got this staff that like he gets to break the laws. He was sort of fanatical about this, not just to the letter but the spirit.
Right. And
he's just like, oh, but the Blackstaff wouldn't. Like, oh, so you know what the Blackstaff is? Oh, okay, cool.
Well, he is the number 2 warden, and he was the number 1 warden at the time he wrote the journal, so he probably had operational knowledge.
Right.
He may not have been cool about it, but exactly what the fuck was he going to do about it? It's like, I don't like that General Patton is boozing and smokes cigars and shit. And it's like, yeah, but he's going to kick your fucking ass if you bring it up. So,
Honestly, I think
him
it could have
knowing
been
about
good.
Nemesis was more surprising.
Well, yeah, that too.
Right.
But it could have been a good like character interaction between him and Ebenezer. Like Morgan, who's basically Arthur's right-hand man, who also doesn't like Ebenezer, and he would have conflicted with him on an ideological perspective. Like that would have been something interesting to see play out.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, following this all through, right? So like, imagine this comes to blows, right? Imagine you've just got like a raw duel throwdown between Morgan and Ebenezer. Morgan was one of the most badass wizards we've actually seen in action, even slightly off screen with the whole, like, closed to the Red King, for example. He might have been afraid of Ebenezer, right? So put that into power perspective. So it's like, again, like Morgan would have spanked Dresden, Ebenezer would have spanked Morgan, and Morgan fucking knew it, so he kept his mouth shut, is the way that I'm seeing it right now.
Morgan definitely would have put up a better fight, though.
Oh, sure. The Nemesis thing is very interesting for 2 reasons. I mean, A, he knows it, so his emphatic denial of there is no Black Council is a little hollow, and it just, to me, it screams flat denial, which is the way that I kind of took it in the book anyways. Like, he fucking knows better. Like, his intuition knows better, but he can't allow it to be a reality, so he's just going to deny it. But also the fact that it settles one of the bigger questions, in my opinion, which is, can mortals be infected? Morgan thinks so, and that's good enough for me. Is that he's concerned that Demorne might have been and might have infected Dresden, which is why they think he might be a destroyer, is that Nemesis got to him. So that's, to me, an answer, even though, it's not 110%.
Well, I still think there's wiggle room, because the way he phrases it is to be a creature of Nemesis. That still, to me, could easily just be like working for Nemesis goals, not infected himself.
Sure. All right.
That's why it was loose enough for, Victor Sells and Denton and Kravos and all of them. It's like, oh, they were all turned and twisted by Nemesis, but there's still enough wiggle room where it's like, well, that's just a plot, possibly. Is it really?
Right.
I still think it's pretty 50-50.
Right. Seduced by drugs and power more than directly
Yeah.
taking control like Cat
Exactly.
Sith and Maeve. So
I mean, it's probably going to come down to whether or not he decides, or whether he has decided that basically you have a soul, you can't be. You don't have one, so Nemesis allows you to act against your behavior type deal. That's where it's going to be, is whether or not that's the case, or if Nemesis is just a corrupter of basically everything except like fucking angels.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know, kind of interesting. I mean, the main problems with it definitely are the pact with Margaret, and then the fact that he just didn't. There's no evidence that he was hard on Demorne in any way, shape, or form. You know, like Harry didn't know who the fuck he was before he was his executioner, and so to me that just means he was not at all watching that situation. You know, like if you're worried that Demorne is a bad guy in any way, shape, or form, you know, because all he had for Dresden were suspicions. I mean, granted, he had broken the first law, but he had never caught him in any way, shape, or form for anything else. So what did he have on Demorne that made him suspicious of Demorne to the point that it was?
I figure that once Harry killed Demorne, and they were looking into the whole situation, then they find out that Demorne was as bad as he was. And that's what Morgan says, like, oh, so that bastard Demorne got him. It's like that bastard who was infected, and I didn't know about it until after.
Right. Could be. Yeah, could be. Yeah. It's plausible enough. So interesting. Definitely more.
Especially like Morgan's irritation with Demorne being the fact that Demorne found Harry when Morgan was trying to find Harry in a foster care system, but he had bureaucratically disappeared. But the bad guy that we didn't know was bad managed to find the kid and possibly instigated everything, including Malcolm's death.
I feel like Morgan probably would have known beforehand. Like, it wasn't just like they get on scene and he discovers he didn't know this all along. Because if he makes a promise to Margaret, who was in league with Justin, surely that conversation comes up. Like, these are the ties I had. This is what we were doing, or what, or there's going to be people looking for him. Justin, this, that, and the other. And so, if he's making a promise to Margaret about
what ties did Margaret have with Demorne?
They ran and they were buddy for a while.
Demorne, the warden, and the outlaw Margaret Le Fay?
Yeah, when she was running around banging, everybody that was an enemy. So.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember this.
Stated. And Margaret was probably a little bit more worried with the Wraith people going after Harry at the time when she was pregnant instead of Demorne, I imagine.
He's gonna find your source.
Yeah, he has that concentrated look.
Because he's the gruff.
Talk amongst yourselves.
The more I think about it, the less. I mean, I like Morgan's character development more before.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It was more like, it seemed more natural. It was this, okay, so he's this guy who's basically this fanatical hard ass that he comes to grudgingly respect / then finally understand at the end. And now it's like, well, we have this backdrop the whole time that he knew that it really wasn't Harry's fault, but he still acted like it was Harry's fault, even though he didn't seem to gain anything out of it other than just being a dick. It's like, I get the whole argument of unreliable narrator, but at a certain point, we got to realize that the only way we're going to get most of the characterization of these people is through Harry. And if it gets undercut by extemporaneous things later, it's like, at what point do we're just like, all right, well, maybe we shouldn't care what this X character is saying now, because it'll come out later that they really felt differently.
I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking about here that I really wish was like somehow mentioned in this, that Harry misunderstood the situation or something, because Morgan clearly saw how Harry understood it, is because it feels like that's accepted as fact. That's what happened. Is when Morgan tries to trick Harry into basically letting Morgan kill him. In book, is that book 3?
I was thinking proven guilty. Right.
A Summer Night, maybe, with the 3 traps that Ebenezer brought up, and one.
Summer Night.
There you go.
Summer Night.
Yeah. Good call.
I feel like, because by reading this and like in general seeing Morgan most of the rest of the books, that felt very out of place. So I thought this short story might have been a good time where he could have been like, I don't know, just somehow drop in. Like, there was no intention to kill him from Morgan's side. There was nobody else out there to be a witness or anything like the way Harry read the situation. But I don't know if...
Oh, okay, here's the quote. It was blood rights.
He wouldn't, right?
Huh?
Morgan, he wouldn't, like, there if Harry had given him excuse. If by reading this and who Morgan is, would he have killed Harry in there?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he's this character. When he's doing that, he's taking glee in it. Like, he's not just doing it to push the guy, just to like, he's actively actually enjoying that he thinks he's going to be able to kill this kid.
Yeah,
which definitely, I mean, taking it from a very forgiving approach, for lack of a better word, it's I could see that being Dresden's perspective, because I think the fulcrum here is think about how he talked to Anastasia about it, right? To Lucio. And she's like, wait, I had no idea this shit was going on, even though I know Morgan and he's not really like that. And, I know that I put him in charge, or at least allowed him to volunteer for it or whatever. So even she's kind of shocked. So I think you get a little bit of, obviously Dresden's jaded because he's had the sword of Damocles over him since he's 16. Morgan is a total dick, and it's easy to see him being a wanker and everything like that. But some of that may be Dresden's bias. So at the end of the day, he's definitely more of a complex character, which is part of why I liked Turncoat and to kind of see those changes, is that, like, you see him still be a disgruntled asshole, but he's kind of at Dresden's mercy in a lot of ways. So, he's also not an idiot. He does have to give a little bit to get shit done, even though he's going to push Molly the entire time, because really underlying all of this, and where I think it starts to be like, regardless of his promise to Margaret, the reason why this isn't Harry Potter is because Harry Potter was basically protected by like a blood pact or whatever you want to call it, not a curse, but whatever. But the fact that Dresden made a conscious choice to kill Dumorn, and Morgan's been alive for 100 years. He's seen Warlock after fucking Warlock. He's killed hundreds of them by himself with his own blade. Regardless of the promises he makes to Margaret, he still can only bend the laws of reality so far, and no one's ever been able to stop a Warlock. Worse, Dresden may be a Warlock with a Warlock Starborn who has the ability to go rogue and decide reality, depending on how this turns out, how much Morgan knew, that sort of thing. So that's like, having a bipolar nuclear weapon walking around. You're like, yeah, you're goddamn right. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop that, even if it makes it worse, even if I can't ultimately and it's futile. Morgan's that guy. He's gonna push that. But it was definitely interesting. That thing, I think, threw most of us for a loop. So,
and that's the thing. I mean, that whole rationale is great if we're talking about the Morgan who's actively, trying to kill him. But he says by his own admission, like, I'm trying to draw out to see if this is what's going to happen. Not even like if he really thought he was that bad, just fucking cut his head off.
Well, I mean, I think that might be tempered by the fact that he's not sure and the promise, but his whole goading him out there is that Morgan needs to be sure, 100% sure, and he's going to goad Harry into doing something stupid because it's probably not in the Destroyer's playbook to be subtle. And even Harry's not a particularly subtle guy, right? He's not running around. He's not Cowl. He's not just making all these machinations behind the scenes or whatever. So he's trying to draw him out. And if Morgan's got to lay his life down to draw him out, he knows that the senior council is going to take care of it, or Lucio's going to take care of it or whatever. I could see that going, but.
I don't know.
Not convinced.
I see you found it there, EG.
Yeah, it was Blood Rights where Ebenezer's talking to him about his mom finally and how they were, he doesn't reveal everything, but Justin Dumorn was old running mate of hers.
I never really thought about that before, but does nobody on the senior council know that Margaret is Ebenezer's daughter?
Everyone knows. They just don't.
Morgan knew it. Rashid knew it.
She's like, who the fuck says? Okay, listen, Blackstaff, your daughter. you know, you gotta take care of that killer.
Well, that's the thing. It's all about the politicking and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe
everyone.
some people didn't know, but probably at least half of them knew.
I'm pretty sure they all. Well, listens to Win knows. That's his friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Langtree knows. You know, Martha Liberty knows, at least by after the fact, because of what she says in Summer Night.
Mm-hmm.
Only Petrovich probably knows because they were friends. So really the only outlier is Ancient Mai, who's old enough to probably most things don't pass by her. Enough does, but you could go either way. And Lafortier, who nobody gives a fuck about because he was an offshoot dead person.
Right.
Yeah, he was a red
twice,
shirt.
Right.
Dead once. Yeah.
And then you get Christos, who's just,
Yeah.
just.
He's the one that they leave in a room with full vampires.
Right.
So, are we ready to get through our 2 chapters?
I suppose.
Where do we leave off?
Chapter
Get into the
35. Right at the
They're
vault.
getting into the vault.
Right.
Yeah. Anna Valmont is basically saying that I can't get into this thing because it's not the same one as from the drawings. And Nicodemus is about to have a stroke and is threatening to kill her. Like, I could give you 3 minutes and you're either opening that door or I'm shooting you.
Right. And it's like, so with all the prep work that I did, I might have been able to open the other vault, but this one's flatly impossible. It's never been done. Yeah, well, I'll shoot you. Okay. And if I fuck up, we're all dead. So
yeah, because
what's the math here?
And now he shoots you, and then what happens? Then, okay, well, they're ass backwards anyway.
Right. You're going to force the vault. Why don't we just go with that plan?
Yeah, really, just do that if that's what your problem is.
in the room that is lined with lockboxes and one claymore mine per square foot or something.
Something like that. Nicodemus is going to be fine though. That's the thing. So
yeah,
yeah, but
no one else will.
Right.
Yeah,
Gray
Nora's plan.
Gray and the Genoa salami probably would have been fine too.
Right.
Maybe. But
actually, probably so would have Asher, because A, it's fire, and B, she's
Well, the claymores, that's a whole bunch of shrapnel. That's the ball bearings. So that's why I think Harry said they turn them all into salsa.
So basically, it would have been Michael and Harry and Anna that would have died, and Binder. No, he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, they're all outside.
Orals are definitely goners. So
yeah, so all the Denarians and Gray would have been fine. They wouldn't have been able to do the plan, but would have been fine.
Right. Yeah. And this all, Harry finds out about this because Michael came to summon him and then kind of watches over her while she's working,
Yeah. So. And Harry has this moral quandary moment of I can just leave her here with all the bad guys and I know that she would blow it and everything's done and then I don't have to deal with the rest of it. But that would be the bad thing to do. So he makes sure that the thorn manacles are really tight and gets very close to the vault. Then they reveal that there are the wards on the floor. And if he steps on them, it'll probably set something off. Because Valmont didn't set anything off, and she trampled all over them.
Right.
It's a further extension of the wizard trap we saw in the short story.
Yeah, they actually called out even hand for it, I think. Yeah, and then everyone else starts leaving the room. Gray says, "I'm not frightened. I'm making that perfectly clear," and then he leaves.
Right.
Whether or not you survive, nobody wants to be fucking.
Yeah, that probably hurt.
Right. Do you have any idea how much that would sting?
Yeah, it probably hurt worse because you're going to survive it and have to put it back together instead of just dying halfway through.
Right. This is going to take me hours to recombobulate. Do you have any idea?
Yeah. So Harry kind of points out to Valmont that it has to be less complex with not as small moving parts. Because of the magic that they put on the floor, it can't be more complex. That's why they had it switched out.
Right.
And he annoys her while she's picking the lock and freaks her out for a minute when she thinks that she's blown it, and then it opens.
Classic, right?
Yeah.
Oh no! Oh yeah, I'm in. So
we did it.
Yeah, and Harry and Gray were bickering with each other. Oh, Gray did have this. Are you sure you want to keep pushing things like this moment? And it's yeah, I think so.
Right.
But she complains about all of the jabber. And he said, I can make some white noise for you.
Yeah.
Shh. Okay. and they go through. Gray becomes Gray Harvey, and they go through the very long hallway of a whole bunch of money and jewels and other vaults.
Yeah, nobody important is in there. Definitely not Lord Wraith, Faravax.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was Dracul named, or am I making that up?
No, I think
No.
just
Okay.
Lord Wraith and Faravax.
Okay.
Hades. Don't
Oh,
disrespect.
Well,
Yeah.
obviously, yeah.
Obviously Hades.
And then, does Gray freak out now, or is that in a minute? So,
What freak out?
well, he's he starts like jittering around, looking like he's gonna rabbit. And
Oh, it's
Tristan's
pretty
like,
much here because
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
they're
he says
looking
he's
around.
Harvey.
I'm a little too Harvey right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
Go
Which
get
is
caught. Go get caught.
interesting. Yeah. So, like,
What
he's
accent
that
was that just
thorough
now,
of a.
Andres?
Hmm?
What accent did you go with just now?
The one in the one in the audiobook.
Right.
So Harry's going to stop short because manacles are not the retina scanners are very damn finicky. Gray undoes it, and then they have another moment of like, "Are you sure you want to keep going?" And Harry references a movie that no one ever hears of ever. And they have a
Right.
moment talking about how you never hear about it ever. And then Gray goes off, and Tessa comes back.
Yay.
Right. Yay, ambush.
Yeah. This was a really good setup of a bad problem because Tessa in a locked room with Harry that Harry cannot use magic because he'll set off the vault and the claymores, and Tessa's very furious and trying to kill him.
Yeah, she comes in the vault, slams the vault door closed, breaks off the handle, doesn't she? Like,
No, the handle's still fine. Not,
Okay.
That's later.
Yeah. Gotcha. So yeah, she basically slams it shut, and then he's like, well, fuck, I don't have magic, and even if I did, Anna's probably trying to get in, which means I have this amount of time, and if I do anything, she'll explode.
Yeah.
Do you want to explode? So.
And Tessa is all unhappy and bug-like. He's like, this is your fault.
And the amount of mental gymnastics this woman has to go through for this being the Restant's fault is like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe Bruce Banner has a quote to be like, you can smell the crazy on that one, so...
Well, you can kind of see it just in the fact that she's a giant bug. Don't like bugs. But yeah, this was kind of a fun fight because he had no ability to do anything other than kind of run around and scream.
Right.
He had to be clever.
He found, didn't he find like a improvised club or something, or is he just hitting her with the staff again? So, because he tussles with her a little bit, but
yeah,
he mostly like vaults over the money bricks, and
he's swinging the heavy quarterstaff and trying to hit her as hard as possible.
Right.
And he had the bright idea of locking himself in one of the vaults with the very heavy reinforced for magical creature purpose bars, and she couldn't get through that. And he's screaming, at least tell me why, because he just wants to know. And she eventually screams, I have not invested 15 centuries to see it thrown away, and then starts screaming at him, and spittle becomes bugs.
Right. Because, you should know this. You've seen her do it before, like, come on. So.
Oh, you're talking about a small favor?
Yeah, is that when it was Guard and Hendrix?
I don't think she did the screaming into bugs. She just kind of collapsed into bugs, I think.
Okay. Either way,
creepy.
She's turned into little swarms of insects before.
Yeah.
Which apparently takes a lot out of her, or at least because
Michael
gets
wholly
involved.
fired her.
Yeah.
That might do something too.
And with a swarm of intelligent tiny bugs that are trying to eat you alive, you'd probably lose your shit. And Harry does. And he's trying to get the thorn manacles off, to hell with anything else, but he can't find his hands or his wrist or the key. And then Michael shows up and does the lay on hands thing.
He holy firebombs them.
Mm-hmm. With Latin.
Well, you can't be holy without Latin. I mean, come on.
Right.
It's an aspect thing to Dutch or Swedish or wherever that one's from.
Yeah, and Harry is able to kind of put himself back together, and he's happy, and Michael still thinks he's a good man and good things like that.
Yay!
They hug and then they kiss and then
No, that was fan fiction.
Okay, sorry.
Hey, gotta keep
Distinctly
your-
un-Catholic fan fiction.
No, yeah, no comment. Yeah.
Okay. And then Nicodemus seems a bit unhappy. It's like, we don't need to fear further interference from Tessa, but how did you do that? It's like, I didn't. I just did the lay on hands thing, the paladin thing. And
Right.
Deirdre and Nicodemus are very unhappy with that. It's like, I don't know what you would expect, though.
Right.
And
Well, it's probably because he did it, but he's doing it with the whole jumbo jet
grace.
side of him.
Right. I know it really seems like Nick's probably never seen it in the wild, but you'd think he'd be able to piece some of that together. Like, dude is basically disabled, right? And needs a cane. Do you think he's been hamming it on for the last few years? Like, he's running around kicking ass for the Lord again. Like, what do you think's going on?
I mean, Nick has to know that he has the grace. I just, like...
I was going to say, Nick might actually, his gut reaction might be like fucking Michael was playing him this whole time.
Right.
Because that's what he would do.
Or that Uriel healed him somehow, like legitimately,
Right.
since they can do that. There was a guy once.
So you guys think that if Michael didn't have the grace, he wouldn't have been able to do that as much?
Not to
that he
that
did to
degree.
Tessa?
If their reactions are any indication.
Right.
But I mean, it's not
what
like
I think. I think all things are possible through the Lord our God. So that's what I think.
Well, because usually that the kind of things he does, like you could understand, like if he was like holding the sword over him, right, and there was like this white light that flashed out and burned them all. But he does it with basically a touch. The only other thing he's done like that I can remember is when he prayed and took the mind whammy from Mab off of him in small favor.
Yeah, I was going to say this isn't the first time he's done a lay on hands type of thing.
Right, but it was not so overt. That was a mental thing. This was an actual physical manifestation, which again is probably because of the grace. If the most experienced Denarian out there is looking at him wide-eyed, like what the fuck?
Right. Yeah, and I mean it also kind of begs the question of how much information sharing he has with Anduriel, because again, Anduriel should fucking know. So,
that's the other thing. It's like you'd think he would know and recognize, but you would think if he did know and recognize, he would have done a fuck ton more to try and screw that up, knowing that the grace was out there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like actually go burn down the carpenter house regardless.
Right.
Something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the most he does is he like has an offhand typical conversation later on when they're talking about, you're in the Underworld now, Paladin. You really think your God's going to be able to protect you down here, this, that, and the other thing? And that's just like, that's standard fare. That would have happened regardless.
Right.
So, who knows? I mean, he's pretty singular-minded at the moment, and so he's doing stupid things. Like
and
pointing a gun at Valmont and saying, open this or like
right.
else. So he's not showing his galaxy brain this particular book.
Right.
Michael continues on with a proclamation of judgment, I guess I'll say, of all of the bad guys. It's like, you think your power is what shapes the world you walk in, but that is an illusion. There is a judge, there is justice, and one day you will receive what you have earned.
Right. And even for Michael, though, this wasn't a Michael thing, right? This was like the grace talking. So he had a Murphy moment where he's like, wait a minute, like, I totally dig those words, but those weren't my words,
Yeah.
So.
And Harry asked later, it's like, what did that mean? It's like, I don't know, you heard as much as I did.
Right. Yeah.
And Harry takes it as like a message to everyone and Dresden of like, they're going to betray you. I know that. Right. Of course they're going to betray me.
Yeah. Tell me something I don't know, like when.
Yeah. Well, he kind of figures out when anyway.
Sure. I'm just saying, like, yeah.
And then he opens the way to the underworld and the room explodes behind them.
Right.
So he was right.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't use a single bit of magic, but then,
right.
But Michael thought of that ahead of time and got all the prisoners out of the way so they didn't become salsa. All right, then they open the way, they go through, and they find the Gate of Fire first, and Hannah Asher's up.
Point of order. Dresden closes the gate behind them.
No, not yet.
No, he doesn't.
Oh, not yet? Okay.
No, because actually, they're still standing in the vault, and
Gotcha.
Asher needs to go through first to turn off the gate of fire first.
You're right.
Yeah. And then she has to, she chooses to get naked because she wants her clothes to survive afterward.
Which is the correct thing to do for everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
Except
Gray's
Michael.
very happy. Yeah. As she's taking off her pants, Michael turns to the side and resolutely does not look because that would be
studying the wall to make sure that it's not going to jump out and attack them. The paladin must always be wary.
He's a carpenter. He did want to make sure it's structurally sound after the
What if the
explosion.
fire comes out and starts burning the whole fucking place down? He's with Harry. It's not exactly impossible.
Right.
Gray was funny. Asher says, "I would rather not go through the rest of this naked," and Gray's like, "I would rather that."
Right.
I mean, to be fair, he's looking at her. He could just easily touch her and become her naked, and just look at himself for the rest of the trip.
It's just not the same when it's yourself. It's just not.
I suppose.
So she goes out there and she basically has a whirlwind of fire and all this nonsense, and then the salamander attacks.
Yeah,
because it's D&D. So
there is a discussion between Gray and Harry of how is she doing that, and then it's well, you have to have a lot of concentration and to play concentration, Simon, checkers, chess, solitaire, Monopoly, Sudoku, Clue, Risk, Axis and Allies, and Poker, and Blackjack all at the same time while counting to 20,000 by prime numbers only, standing on one foot and balancing a styrofoam cup of hot coffee on your head. And when you can do all that, we can start with you walking through a small campfire. And Gray just says, "I can play poker."
Right.
I can play poker. I like Marston's Gray a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun with the accent, I think. And then the salamander's attacking, but she has no weapons and can't really do much more than try to run for the lever. And Nicodemus throws his sword to spear one of them.
Yeah, because Dresden basically just looks at him and be like, "Do something," and Nick's like, "Oh, right," and then just hucks the sword, and it's like, "What? Fine. What?"
I like how Dresden's even even if you just spend an idle afternoon every 20 years throwing the sword, he still has a lot of throwing sword.
Right. Yeah.
Almost like he shouldn't be losing sword fights.
Well, she just had the power of
Shush, I don't want to hear
belief.
That's the whole gimmick of the sword is the equalizer, man.
Don't care.
It takes out their damage reduction, their spell resistance. It makes them susceptible to these crazy words and feel goods.
Yeah, so it's only 3,000 years of skill versus some 40 years of skill. I wonder who would win.
Not even 40.
So fun fact about skill is that there is an upper limit. So if he had 20,000 years of skill, unless he's invented new techniques, which in his case is possible,
probably.
So yeah, it's a classical thing that it's okay, so raw numbers and luck and a few other things go into it, but in her case, I'm going to blame the holy sword.
I mean, I would say with inventing new skills, I would argue, how often do you see precision sword throwing? I think Nicodemus is one of the only people who actually throws and hits.
Sure.
Will Turner, Pirates of the Caribbean.
There you go. So he's probably only been practicing for 10 years then. He's like, "Oh, I saw that movie," and then
imagine he's never practiced it before. Goes sees Pirate of the Caribbean one night and he's like, "You know what? That's a good idea.
One of these days that's going to come in handy."
Yeah.
But he does. He practices with them for, what did Will say? 5 hours a day. So he's just sitting there in a room alone, just throwing a sword for 5 hours.
Well, what's he got to do while he's waiting for his Barnaby curse to come back or whatever? So
I thought he can do that once a year.
He can do that.
That's what I'm saying. He's got 364 days of throwing sword practice. You think he's running around being evil all the time? How many vaults can you invade? Come on.
One.
I mean, even
he's
bad
got,
guys has got to have time.
Even if he does it once every 6 months or once every quarter, that's still a lot of time that he's got cutting tongues out of squires and generally just being a douchebag, eating donuts while a wizard is under a waterfall. Just look at all the leisure time the dude has.
I mean, I gotta imagine he's got quite the investment portfolio he's got to manage too. That's gotta take some time.
Nah, he's got people for that too.
Yeah,
But I mean,
no, you have
let's
people
let's
for
say
that.
he puts in an honest 4 hours of work a day. That's still, easily 4 to 8 hours of sword throwing practice. So go watch a movie, cuts that down to 6. I mean, whew,
Writing Dresden and Michael Slash fiction.
right. Okay. So he
I assume
bullseyes
that's
the
what he was doing to
salamander.
torture Ivy in Small Favor, but that
There you go. So he bullseyes the salamander because reasons, and then she pulls the lever and
Yeah.
scorches her hands because she totally didn't think about that.
Yeah,
I
she
think
was
she didn't
sweating.
account for the sweat. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah. So
Yeah, and then they let it cool down a little bit before they get roasted and running and trying to help her.
right.
Harry returns her clothes shellac free, but Gray offers to help her put it all back on because now that her hands are all blistered, she may not be able to do all of the small like clasps and buttons and stuff.
A true
And
gentleman.
he's exactly.
Chivalry's not dead.
She's wary of him. It's like, I think I'm a little smarter to get from help from you. It's like, you only say that because you think I'm interested in your body. Well, yes, obviously. I'm also interested in what you like to do with your body.
If he was just interested in her body, he could just become her. He wants to have fun with her.
Gray had so much more personality in this than he did in his short story.
Yes. Have we yelled about that one yet?
I don't remember.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So now Asher's all uppity and thinks she can do the next gate too.
Yeah.
Should have let her.
Then they see that it's a giant, grindy, smushy puzzle, and she doesn't want it anymore. And this is when Harry shuts down the gate back to the real world because he doesn't want to lose his value to all the bad guys that absolutely want to squish him and basically causes an argument.
Right.
Also, is this not the first time that Harry's gate has just stayed open?
No, he's had to specifically underpower it before. He's talked about how him opening gates is more like just tearing holes in a reality, and he uses a lot more power than is probably necessary.
Don't they usually like close?
Yeah,
Isn't that like?
Well, they start to close, but he's talked about how, like for example, he had to use Lily to hold open the one for winter, so she had to be there holding the gate. That he's used it kind of as a weapon where he kept it small so that it would close faster and stuff. And in this case, apparently he just put a lot of chutzpah into it. So
it does seem like his ability to manage and erect or disable gates or ways, I should say, are much better than they were before.
Yeah, well, he's got better control. He's got
that was kind of the
power application.
I wanted to.
He has a mantle to help him out with it.
Yeah. He's better at it than he was in, say,
even changes. I think
Grave Peril.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mantle plus the training he got really like beefed him up on his control. I'm really looking forward to him having gadgets again to refine his control even more.
He might also, and obviously we haven't seen it, he could have actually, used that friggin' gem that his mom left him and learned some things about the ways and maybe have a more practical application of how they work and better, easier ways to open it and how they function and this, that, and the other thing.
I kind of say we haven't explored that since changes.
Yeah, exactly. I'd really prefer to see that come back, to the
peace talks
somewhere. Yeah.
Everything happens.
Well, it's going to have to happen.
But...
You know what? And it's the perfect time to happen in peace talks because there's going to be a friggin' tentacle hound running around through corners everywhere. So he's going to have to track it using a thing that can bump around everywhere.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how like opening short ways and jumps or something like that might be a thing. But
he's light speed skipping. It's Star Wars, all right? It's awesome.
No, stop. Okay. But because Harry's on the defense, I'd be skeptical that it's going to happen in peace talks. This is the one thing I don't think is going to happen in peace talks for those keeping.
Well, now that's the only thing that's going to happen in peace talks.
Yeah, right.
Mark the calendar. Something doesn't happen in peace talk. Justin just said that.
Right.
You know what doesn't happen in peace talks? We know people that don't die. So
Nicodemus doesn't come back in peace talks, so that's two things. Deidre, not going to be in peace talks, so
unlikely.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, we also know that like Mirror Mirror has a time frame beforehand. Because there was an idea for a little while that like peace talks would end with like him getting dumped into the mirror dimension, like just right off the bat.
Right.
but now we know it's at least, 6 months later
Well, it's
that things are happening.
it's not going to be in peace talks, that part anyway. But
Right.
So we know Mirror Mirror will not happen in peace talks.
Right.
also true.
That's the point.
But the more important thing being the whole Christmas Eve story. So
Yeah.
Okay, so Dresden runs into the grindy ice of doom and gets
No,
beaten.
not yet. He is smart,
Gosh.
and he demands
No,
a lift
this
from the
time we'll just walk. I
Janoskwa.
appreciate it.
The Dinosaur would rather rot down there
Yeah,
for the rest
because
of his
he's
life.
smart.
He's really just spiteful.
There's a reason he has Ursil.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he's big and dumb.
Yeah, and
Who's dumber, Urshiel or what's the other one?
Magog.
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 I would say the guy who was screaming at someone who could one-shot him.
Oh yeah, Magog. Yeah, so that's fair.
And they're all
Because
they're all-
Ursil, whether or not he gets beaten, he's always comes back. You haven't seen Magog again.
But you see him in Iran, right?
True.
Because
Yeah.
he was in the picture in Iran.
Off
Yeah.
screen.
Mine early
doesn't
on.
come back. He doesn't come back in this town anymore.
we can somewhat assume that all the angels must have like some pretty high intellectus and not be that dumb. So I wonder why they basically
Yeah, that dumb.
yeah, why is it like Magog is like basically just a big brute.
We don't know that. I mean, there's got in every faction, there's always going to be the muscle who's not there for their celestial intelligence.
Right. I mean,
Like they're going to have intelligence compared to a human. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
they're not so stupid.
right, and that's kind of where they get undersold, right? Is because like you got to think that like these might be the dumbest of the angels, but that's like okay, so you got Lex Luthor, Darth Sidious, and a few other mega villains. Okay, which one's the idiot child there? You know, like okay, somebody is going to be the lowest there. Doesn't mean he's not smarter than you.
Yeah, they can't all be Thor Namshiel, who's got like this Harry level interest in magic and yada yada.
Right. Thank you. Thorn and Namshiel is the Denarian nerd. Now we've got that forever.
Well, that was always the case, just because I voiced it.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So the
So,
Genisqua would rather rot.
yes. And Gray also has this line of like, but what if you die and we're stuck down here? And Harry says like, well, you have to think positive thoughts and wish me luck or something. Deirdre gets the Janoskwa to calm down and go away. And she's mad at Harry. It's like, you don't need to keep like badgering him like that. But it's like, I still need a lift. I still need to see above because they're moving in a pattern. So
Right.
Deirdre is going to give him a lift with all of her bladed hair. And
I
hope
guess
he doesn't
what is it? She uses his own words against him there.
yes, I think you'll be well motivated to be stable and think positive thoughts. And
Right.
Great laughs. Yeah. And he decides not to say something about split ends and chainsaw oil because he understands how to be polite.
I mean, you gotta say Harry's grown as a person.
Right. Then he stays there for about 10 minutes watching the pattern, and he describes it as like there are a bunch of cogs with one tooth missing. So if you time it right, you can just follow the empty tooth all the way through. And then he runs, and he realizes he miscounted at least once.
Right.
But he gets through most of the way, and then he just blasts one of them out of the way with Fazari and parkours his way to the end of the gate.
Parkour!
Michael says, I think you're supposed to just do parkour and not say parkour.
Right.
Have I ever said anything about your Latin battle cries? No, not even once.
I think Michael's Latin battle cries are better than Harry's grasp on Latin myself, but
Definitely.
Well, that's
Yeah,
because
I
he
mean,
believes in them, and Harry's just
Yeah.
had to do it out of obligation
Also-
to understand the council sometimes.
right. And Michael might have like cared and gone to church
Dude,
every
Michael straight
other
up
day.
went to like friggin' what's the word I'm looking for? I don't remember. You know, whatever the
Seminary?
hardcore sect of Catholic school would have been.
Oh, I got you.
Apparently it's so cold there.
Like
Even
Jesuits and stuff
Even
like
the
that.
winter night
Right.
is like, oof, this is chilly
Right.
at the gate.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, it can't be chillier than when he was running around naked on the hilltop. So
Apparently.
Asher complains about being cold, and Valmont says, in a voice so dry it defied anyone listening to find any snark in it, wear looser clothes. All right. And
whatever.
then It's the Gate of Blood, and Nicodemus and Deirdre, Janoska, Gray grab people and says, "It's time for one of you to die."
Aha! I, Nicodemus, betray! Shocker! And then he betrays again later.
Yeah, but this one's just theater.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
So he puts on the theater that they're going to kill Valmont in order to open the gate, and Michael will not allow that. If you do that, Dress and I will fight to the death. And Harry says, right, we'll fight you, not each other, in case that wasn't clear.
Right.
All right, and Nicodemus and Michael are like insulting each other a little bit. And the Janoska is again like trying to grip Harry to death.
When you got big hands, everything looks like a nail, right? So
Sure. A nail to stick into the winter night? Yeah,
Yes.
Makes sense. Nicodemus is doing some of those things like the insulting because they're in the underworld. Like, do you really think that your God can reach you down here, Christian?
right.
Yeah. And Michael has his very big face, and he's like, yeah,
As,
but
like, as
whatever.
always, completely unshakable.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Be like, how do you think this all got here?
Yeah.
So
For a brief moment, Michael was thinking about like the idea if he sacrifices himself to save Harry and all the problems, and like, no, but you're carrying enough of a burden already. Don't do bad decisions with Uriel's grace.
right.
Yeah. Asher steps in a little bit, and she basically appeals to the idea of money. And Nicodemus and Deirdre go off in a conference, and if they struggle, kill them.
But it's okay because the adversary is not going to be able to get to you down here. So
Yeah. Asher was upset. It's like, what is it with you religious types? And Harry says, like, name like Hannah Asher and you aren't Jewish? But apparently that's different. I don't know.
I mean, it's just her heritage. She doesn't have to be religious about it.
Meh. Gray has a moment, and since he's holding Valmont, it's like, do you really want everything to fall apart here? No, not yet.
No.
What I did for insurance, but he's talking about killing one of us, and this is when Harry gets like clever. It's like, what if he wanted to kill someone, he would just kill them. Why is he bargaining? And he starts listening to Nicodemus and Deirdre, and they're having their tearful goodbye, saying, Nicodemus says, I wish there was another way, but you're the only one I can trust, and the enemy won't be able to get you here.
okay, so he does say enemy, not adversary.
No, yeah, you will be safe from the enemy here is the exact words.
Gotcha.
That's why it gets to be another coin flip as to on what he's talking about.
I like the vagueness because it doesn't have to be, God.
It could be the goody goodies. It could be the reality killers. It could be
It
fucking Tessa.
Yeah, it could be Lucifer. So
Wow.
And Harry assumes it's something to do with hell.
Right.
Yeah, I suppose it could be.
Yeah, because usually, and that's why I was curious about the adversary word, because that's been used in some other connotations and has more connotations. But
I don't think it's hell so much as because it's like, well, I mean, when Deirdre dies, she goes to hell. So yeah, I guess that could be.
well, Greek hell. So
No, I'm saying like if she died and lost her coin the same general way, her soul, whatever's left of it, would go to hell, presumably.
sure.
So yeah, I imagine if these Denarians are the ones that, even Lucifer was wary about backstabbing him, and he's the one who, shunted them away, that whoever was host to them is not going to necessarily be. I don't know. It depends. It's still hell, so they're probably going to get fucked over either way.
Right.
But
well, I thought there was like a little bit of a tease somewhere that it was like when they all fell, because they're all rebel angels, right? They were sort of his lieutenants, but at the same time, it seems like the reason why they're on Earth is because even he didn't trust them afterwards.
Yeah,
So
well,
they
and
kinda had a
Duriel was
falling
his
out.
lieutenant, and these are the 30 most.
And to be fair, some of
the backstabbing angels that he didn't trust.
Right.
Yes, it's like if you look at Lashiel, for example, she wasn't really committed to Lucifer, at least by her own what she said.
No, she was, and that was
she was kind of a fence sitter.
Yeah, that was
Right.
added to in A Word of Jim, that she was basically like playing both sides, and so kind of like what was it in Dogma, the muses that didn't pick a side, and then they got shunted down too. So yeah, but I mean, it's the same deal with like Meb and Leah. Helen and the Denarians are frenemies enough that they can call upon Lucifer's power for Hellfire circles and shit like that. But I doubt any one of them is looking to take a day trip down to the sauna.
Okay.
She dead yet?
Well, yes. She says something of like, I've chosen my path. I regret nothing. I love you, Father. And then he kills her.
Yay.
Like, yeah, because that's the problem. The problem is that you love someone who's like twisted. Yeah. And Nicodemus holds her for a few minutes, and then he uses the knife to cut open into her chest cavity and pull out the coin. And Michael is aghast and it's like, what have you done? Nicodemus says, did you think you were the only one in the world willing to die for what he believes, Sir Knight? And Michael is looks like he's about to start crying himself, and says, she just let you do it, and she was your child. Did your own precious God not ask the same of Abraham? Did he not permit Lucifer to destroy the children of Job? I at least have a reason for it. And then he gets everyone else to be let go. And after a couple of minutes, Deirdre's ghost gets out of her body and opens the gate.
Right. Yeah, so I think I distinctly remember in my notes that I was like, oh, thank God he did this before Endgame, because could you imagine, or before Infinity War? But the whole comment about like you're the only one I can trust is like, I think the way the gate works is like definitely the dying, then the spirit forming. But if they decide to fuck you or have second thoughts or whatever, they don't go open the gate and you're screwed anyway. So
Correct.
it's crazy heavy, what happens, and definitely fuels some of the emotion later on, in the book. So just a powerful moment for sure.
Yeah.
Which we will definitely get to next time.
Are you trying to say you want to leave?
He's out.
Saying we're at an hour.
Irrelevant. Time is linear.
It's not a line. It's a ball of wibbly wobbly time.
I mean, we've made through 5 chapters somehow.
What? That's crazy.
That's the beginning of chapter 40 is when they open and they're like looking through the gate into the vault, and it's just like a aura of gold light and all of the jewels and whatnot. Asher about has a stroke.
So it's what's his face's soul is in there. So
Smaug.
Pulp Fiction. Oh, okay. That works too. The Arkenstone or whatever.
The Arkenstone in this case is 5 things.
Right. Yeah. So what? 2 more episodes, maybe?
Maybe. We're about 3/4 of the way through the book.
Depends on how cool
Maybe.
the Dresden drop is in 2 days, and
So
whether or not in 30 minutes she's like, oh boy, did you guys mess up today? No.
Guess what? Here's chapter 2 of Beastalks.
Right.
That would be good.
No,
Okay.
no.
I'll allow it. I'm in. So,
Yeah, that would be fun.
No.
Yep.
But then we would have to talk about it because it's
No.
news.
Drop the book or no. None of this bits and bobs of the book. No.
We
By
can
the
get some
time-
Bob microfiction. That'd be fun.
By the time we finally
You
get
know
it,
what?
he'll have dropped a chapter, like the whole thing, and be like, haha, suckers, I published it this way.
I wouldn't mind a Bob microfiction. As long as he's not interacting with Butters.
Oh, he probably will be now.
Oh, yeah.
No. He'll be talking to himself. Or let him
I
talk
would,
to.
I
Let
would
him.
love a Butters one.
Let him. We had a Butters short story. That's enough.
And it was great. Loved
Oh,
it.
it
One of
was.
the best short stories.
Ugh, you disgust me.
Did I do the thing?
Sure.
Like professional
If you
podcast
want.
do? I don't, but since Ben's not here, I kind of jumped on that grenade.
Yeah.
So this has
Well,
been the
nobody
Dresden
else
Files
is
podcast. It's a member of the Broken Jars Network. Go click on the drivethrurpg.net link.
And then buy something.
Yeah,
Right.
give us money. Lots and lots of money.
Give us $12,000 a month, and we'll be good and professional. We promise.
Yeah.
We'll get a studio at that point.
Some of us will even put on real pants.
What? No.
For $12,000, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
qualify-
okay.
what
I mean, if that was a
qualifies-
qualifier, then sure.
What
But just
qualifies
because
as real pants?
he's got an important question. Answer Lance's question.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Not pajamas, and not
Okay, so-
not pants.
So sweatpants are okay.
Are
As
short
long as
pants
they're
okay?
what?
Short pants, are they?
You know what? No, it's got to be yoga leggings.
Yoga
Okay.
leggings?
For 12 grand, I could.
I could
handle
see
that.
Justin in yoga leggings.
Yeah.
Don't see me. What's wrong with you?
Well, it's either that or the slash fiction. Pick one.
Definitely no. So anyway, we have other podcasts. You can find them on brokenjars.xyz. Save us from ourselves. We've got the Sim Talk. Did the DMs Anonymous record? No.
Haven't heard
Okay.
anything. It's usually Jacob who like arranges it, and so I should
No, I
probably
don't.
ask him what we're doing.
And then the office is done. So do we have anything else going on?
I don't think so because we keep
We
badgering
haven't
each
for
other
quite
to
some time.
start a new one, and none of us have.
Right.
About 4 years ago, I heard about this political podcast.
We've got ideas and stuff.
This is why you should send us the money. All just
Right.
us.
Right.
We should really
Also-
do that movie or book club podcast.
I would
You were in?
rather a movie club.
Oh yeah, which was also one of the ideas we kicked around. But
Oh my god!
In any
Oh my
case-
god, that was so long ago.
it's been a couple months.
Holy shit, that was 6 years ago, I think.
Would
Which
you
is
do
like
more-
Shattered was 6 years ago, right? So
No, I think that was the movie one, like because Jacob wanted to do like the really bad, terrible movies.
oh yeah,
Make
no,
everyone-
Someone wanted to do riff tracks.
guilty pleasures.
the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the difference between what we would do and like Mystery Science Theater 3000 exactly, but that was talked about like 6 years ago.
I'll tell you two of the differences. I am not a female and I am not a robot. That's what MST3K does different.
Can you
So,
prove either one of those things to a
not
satisfactory
on the
degree?
air? You're welcome.
If
Well-
you say so.
This has been another episode of the Dress and Files podcast.
Yeah, we're totally not meant for